And welcome to another edition of Flying with TFC. We are once again on the runway 15 at the shuttle landing facility at Kennedy Space Center, getting ready for another run to Wideawake International on Ascension Island in the Atlantic, the South Atlantic, near the equator. I'm getting the MFDs set up here that I'm going to be using during the flight, and as you might guess, this is post commentary that I'm doing after the video, because I have come to the conclusion that there is no point in even trying to do a live commentary, at least not yet, during one of these flights, because I'm too very much focused on what I'm doing. And so a little bit of commentary in post-production seems to me to be the better way to do it. Setting up the flight recorder, which will make an orbiter flight recording of the trip, just in case it gets lucky. And I will give you a little bit of a spoiler in that this is a pretty good flight, in my opinion. Alright, we're all set to take off. Now I have come to decide to do one thing. I open the scram doors before launch, and I start the scram engines very shortly after passing Mach 1. Alright, so here we are, liftoff. And the mission elapsed timer begins counting when the wheels leave the ground. Turning onto a heading of, I believe, about 108 or 107, and climbing. We'll be passing Mach 1 shortly after passing over the vehicle assembly building. There it is down there, and there's Mach 1. Enabling the scram engines anytime now. There they go. Maintaining the climb, because at this altitude don't really want to be going as fast as scram engines can make you go. You develop thermal problems really quickly that way. But at the same time, I don't want to climb too fast. What I'm actually looking to do is level out around 30 kilometers or so, between 30 to 40 kilometers, to get leveled out and stay leveled out as much as possible. Here we've got what I want, which is mostly level flight, a slight pitch upwards, climbing a little bit, but mostly staying level, letting the ship get a little hot, because the scram engines do work better when they're hot. I don't let it get as hot as I should, but give me time. We'll continue through this and actually burn out the scram fuel. One of the things about this flight that has initially given me a lot of trouble was the roll to inverted flight. And I finally got it figured out that if I do the roll to inverted flight while the ship is facing the velocity vector the way it is now, that roll will be very much easier because it's taking place about the long axis of the ship, and that long axis is aligned with the direction of flight. That makes the roll a whole lot easier. I was doing it, or trying to do it, when the ship wasn't even close to aligned with its direction of flight. I'm also not doing a whole lot, nearly as much, worrying about my direction of flight, my course, my heading, as I was before. Because what I do now is I get my heading early on, right after launch, and then I hold that heading. And just basically keep the same direction regardless of how the compass stripe in the top changes the indication of what the heading is, because you have to realize that basically this is one orbit going to rendezvous with another orbit. Wideawake International is on the surface of the Earth, but it's going around the Earth. It is technically speaking in orbit. Its altitude happens to be the same as the ground, but it's in orbit, and you've got a ship coming around in orbit towards it, and where the ship is going is where the base is going to be when it gets there, just like any other orbital rendezvous. At this point, it's just a matter of controlling vertical speed and continuing to accelerate. Coming up on main engine cutoff here. If I'm going to have enough fuel for braking, I have to stop burning it soon. 11.03 kilometers per second, a personal record. And now we're in super cruise mode. I accelerated this part of the video 4 times because there's really not much happening here. Just maintaining altitude control, maintaining control of vertical speed, and continuing straight ahead. I would have loved to include some cool music in this phase of the flight, but I can't think of anything appropriate that isn't copyrighted. So just imagine Danger Zone from Top Gun playing right about now. Coming up on the end of the Super Cruise mode, and it's time to get ready to do some braking. First, turn heads down and apply some thrust to take the bite off of the vertical speed and keep from climbing too much higher. And then pitch almost full retrograde, still keeping some of that thrust directed upward to keep the vertical speed from climbing any higher, and actually to bring it down to 0. Other than that, it's full-on braking. You can see on the display here, my vertical speed is about 200 meters a second, and I'm trying to bring that down before I climb too awfully higher. Right now I'm at 85 kilometers, coming up on 86 kilometers altitude. I don't really want to get much higher, although being at this altitude does give me plenty of time for reorienting the ship for re-entry. And now that my orbital velocity is low enough that I can actually re-enter, and that I am actually beginning to descend, it's time to get oriented for re-entry. And you can see here I did have a problem with over-controlling on the roll, but I was able to correct it quickly enough and engage the attitude hold autopilot to hold my 45-degree angle of attack. At this point, it's mostly hands-off. I did put in a little bit of a bank to try to turn toward a little bit more closer lined up with the base, because I am actually at this point I'm coming up a little bit south of it, and I would rather approach from the north. I have found that that is definitely a better way to approach from.
Mach 22. Mach 21.
And of course it wouldn't be a KSC to wideawake speed run without spectacular re-entry plasma.
Mach 19. Mach 18.
will note that at this point of the flight, I was actually a little bit concerned that I might overshoot the base from what I was seeing on Aerobrake MFD.
Mach 16.
And if you're seeing flashes to black screen, I have no idea why that's happening. It didn't happen during the playback. And this exterior scene is made from the playback from the orbiter flight recording.
Mach 14. Mach 13. Mach 12. Mach 11. Mach 10. Mach 9. Mach 8. Mach 7.
My concerns about missing the base were a little bit overblown because what I see here on Glide Slope MFD on the left indicates that I am not yet past the base. And so I begin
Mach 5.
a hard bank and pitching over and facing down
Warning.
to get myself lined up.
System.
And of course, this makes things a little warm.
Mach 4. Warning. Hull temperature. Warning. Hull temperature. Mach 3. Mach 2. Subsonic. Warning. Hull temperature. Warning. Retro doors open.
Now this was a little frustrating. I figured that since I was below Mach 1 that I wouldn't have a problem opening the retro doors in preparation for using them for braking on the runway. I had to open them 2 or 3 times before I didn't get a warning.
5,000.
I need to look up the maximum dynamic pressure for those things.
4,000. 3,000. 2,000.
Finally, the retro doors stay open without giving me a warning. Meanwhile,
Clear to land.
it's just about time to put the gear down.
1,900. Gear down at long. 700.
Trivia point, Landing on runways has never been something I've been good at in flight simulators. However, I've done a few good landings on runways in Orbiter, most notably this one.
50, 40, 30, 20, 15, 10, 5, wheels down.
And retros. And the brakes. 22 minutes, 35 seconds to wheel stop.